Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? So today we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Terece Hahn. We kind of just get right into it. Don't even go for formalities. I had a blast and I learned a lot about myself. And I'm pretty sure you all are going to enjoy it too. We talk about her story and then her going through the medical system for her nursing practitioner stuff. And it's just awesome to hear how now she's a part-time nurse and a part-time author, and she's doing what she loves. So it is awesome. And well, let me stop rambling and we just get right into this. Here we go.
Welcome to the Josh Bolton Show, where we dive into interesting and inspiring conversations. And now, your host, Josh Bolton.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I was sitting here at 9:50 and I'm like, okay, I'm going to log in early, just check my levels. And it's like, you didn't accept this. I'm like, oh shoot, I better accept this. I better accept this so she can get in.
I didn't accept it.
So yeah, other than that, it's been a wonderful Friday. How about yours?
Good. Yep. Day off. So enjoying.
Yes. So what do you do for work?
I'm a nurse practitioner. So, yeah. Oh, everyone says that right now.
Especially with COVID.
Now it's, yeah. And I'm in urgent care. So it's a lot of COVID.
Yes. That was one, I was talking to a nurse a while ago and she's like, yeah, this COVID thing, everyone thinks it's a hoax. She's like, wait until you get in the lobby and then you're going to be like, it's not a hoax anymore.
Yeah, it's wild right now, obviously, but surviving it. So, third wave. We're pros now.
Yeah. Seriously. So, okay, is the news true that you guys are just overfilled on your beds?
So I'm in an urgent care, a minor emergency setting. So we don't have beds per se where I'm at. So in the hospital, it's pretty filled. It's pretty backed up. Luckily, though, with this new strain, it's not quite so severe, I guess you could say. So we're not sick people, at least right now. We'll see in a couple weeks.
That's where my I do martial arts and my instructor's super anti-vax, super anti-COVID. He's like, COVID doesn't exist. I'm like, you sure, sir?
Yeah, man. It's a very controversial topic. That's for sure. It's just, it's one of those where everyone has their own rose-colored glasses that they read through it. So it's interesting. It's been a very interesting experience to be part of that history for sure.
It really has been. Yeah, I got COVID back in December of 2020.
Did you?
Yeah. And I don't remember what strain that was, but it was pretty gnarly. And
yeah. I honestly, I haven't gotten it yet, which I'm really surprised. I've had 2 times where I was real sick and I was like, this is it. This is it.
You're just sitting there like, all right, take the day.
Essentially at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to get it. It's just going to happen. Not yet. So far so good.
Hey, you might be the lucky one.
Spread the love. Who knows? But
who knows?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, let me pull up my thing. What do you do on the people pleasing, right?
Yeah. So I had gone through a bunch of different kind of things with nurse practitioning. I was doing primary care and I was working through that. And I was just like, man, this isn't hitting the things that I really wanted to do. And there was a lot of red tape and a lot of insurance sort of involvement in the type of practice that you could do. And then I was looking around, I go, whoa, did I go into the wrong field? What I do, I went into school for almost 7 years and now I'm not loving this. And so what I really realized was that a lot of my motivators behind why I was doing what I was doing was to check the boxes, to kind of hit all the resume boxes. And at the end of the day, I go, okay, something's not hitting here. Something's not working. And it wasn't ever that I didn't like taking care of people or being involved with people. It was just at the mercy of time. You can only spend so much time with people, and it's short-lived. And so I just kind of went into this spiral of depression. You know, I was seeing patients, I was seeing people, and I'd be like, go to counseling, like talk to someone about it, or here's an antidepressant. I only have 15 minutes with you, you know, and it was just like not getting to the root cause of why they were so upset. And then I was starting to realize I was in the same boat. So I was like, oh, okay, let's look into this. And so then I did this deep dive for the last like 5 years of counseling. I actually ended up hiring a life coach, and we really got down to the why of how did I end up here? How come I'm at this place, you know, searching for excitement and fulfillment, and I've reached the pinnacle of a doctorate, of a profession, and I'm practicing doing the things that I thought I wanted to do. And then I realized I was off. Something was off. And so I spent several years of kind of figuring that out, all while still practicing. So I did continue, and I do continue to practice. But what I found was that I wasn't tapping into a creative side of my brain, and I hadn't allowed that for years. You know, honestly, what you're told is like artists don't really make it in the world. They're like, there's 1% of people who make it. And so I just kind of, Julia, or what's her name? I wrote it down because I'm terrible at remembering this, but Julia Cameron. And what it does is it has you work through kind of blocks, or has prompts for you about just little things that bring out old versions of you. And one of the activities was weekly artist dates, and you take yourself on these dates and go out and just do fun things. So I started to let fun back into my life. And then I kept going and started noticing how much I love to write. So I started to do that more on a consistent basis. And then I actually had declared back when I was in high school that I wanted to be a writer. And I kind of forgot, like completely forgot I wanted to be a writer because it didn't make sense. And so finally I got to the place where I'm like, now I want to write. And now I'm writing a book.
That's awesome. I lost you like halfway through, but I picked up at the end. That's amazing. And that's the biggest one I've noticed in talking to people is that they don't listen to that inner kid. Like they just suppress it and put it aside and like, I'll maybe eventually get back to you.
Right. And it's interesting because the person that you were coming from when you were a child is the most authentic version of yourself. And then all these different opinions and lessons and people trying to, I'd say, protect you, are trying to guide you down these roads. And so you're like, well, geez, they're telling me they're ahead of me. They've experienced life. They must know what's what. And so you follow that. And then you realize like, that's right for them, or it's right for their situation. But for me, it didn't quite fit.
100%. Sorry, there's Rufus. I try to mute in between.
No,
but yeah, it's very true. The biggest one for me is like, I always joke with my guests, the ones that I do get around to this. It's like, I'm very introverted. I can stay in my room clearly and not really interact with people and be fine. But it's like, I do like a good conversation. So it's like the conflict. I want to talk to people, but at a distance.
For sure. Hands down. Because I'm an introvert too. But when it's really engaging and interesting, I'm like, let's go there, and
Exactly.
these conversations versus just the superficial, like small talk. I'm not great at that.
I'm very bad at that. I'm like, you probably have learned some bedside manners doing your practice. For me, people are like, oh, you want to do this? I'm like, no, that's really stupid. I don't know.
See, I'm learning to say no. That's the big thing with this people pleasing thing is like, I think a lot of people pleasers are attracted to like healthcare. I mean, it makes sense, right?
It does,
like
yeah.
It fits those tendencies around people pleasing. And so it's definitely one of those things where I'm starting to work with boundaries, even within my practice and with the people that I'm working with,
Yeah. So then, can you give us a little history of, maybe then we'll say without getting too personal, unless you want to, about your people pleasing and some of the hiccups that came up from it?
Yeah, I think part of it is it's my personality. I'm pretty competitive. I'm pretty like driven. I don't know if you're into Enneagram stuff. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like a type 3, which is the achiever. So it's just kind of my natural tendency. I was also the middle child. So there's a little bit of that piece that comes from, the forgotten child, and overcoming those kinds of things. Growing up in a small town too, I just didn't see evidence of other things that were going on, like you saw the teachers, you saw the nurses, you saw the doctors. But that was kind of it, you didn't see a whole lot of writers. You didn't see people doing a whole lot of entrepreneur sort of ventures and stuff. And so it's kind of a combination of what I observed, what society told me, who I am as a person. And it just kind of all meshed together to really push me down that road. And then I think part of it is, I think it's a universal thing that people want to be seen, and then doing it in the wrong way that is that external validation versus the internal validation.
Well, 100%. No, that's very true. That's the biggest one for me. That's just funny listening to you. It was like, I was very similar. I, as a young kid, I didn't even know it. My parents have been telling me for ages to like, you created stories and you were good at that. Like they're like at whatever, I think it was like 6 or 7, like you created this whole story of a leprechaun hopping on a plane, bootlegging or like sneaking on Hawaii, then realizing this and went back to Ireland. And I'm like, I don't remember this.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of another thing is like you're raised a certain way in a certain generation with certain parents who went through certain things. And that all it really plays into the person that you end up being. And so it's an interesting ride because it ended up being a ride back to who I was in the beginning. So
interesting. So then can you tell us of that journey, especially the books and then your coach and getting back there?
Yeah. So it was really like in a small town, you're that big fish, little pond kind of situation. And so I had this really sense of confidence, and I was surrounded by just people who really supported me and everything. And then I went off to college and I was like, oh, wait a second. I'm a little fish in a huge ocean. Like it was a really big culture shock for me. And so like all my confidence at that time just kind of dwindled just because, like I say, I'm an observer. So I really watch dynamics of things and I couldn't really figure out where I fit into those dynamics. So it took me, in my 20s to really play that out and see what I really wanted, all while still moving forward with a degree, with a future, with what I was supposed to do and never taking a break, and so then, like I say, when I get to the end of that road and realized this isn't quite right, that's when I finally was like, okay, I got to pause and see what I'm missing here. And that's where I kind of deconstructed everything up to that point and realized how like insecure I was and needing that external validation and that kind of feedback versus giving it to myself. And so it went through like healing, honestly, forgiving myself for kind of losing myself along the way. And then getting that confidence back.
That's so interesting. So for me, my culture shock was actually more junior high than college. It was, man, people say, oh, high school's worse. Like, no, junior high is when all the hormones are kicking in. They're going for blood.
Yeah.
But and that's where it's funny for me, because I realized at a certain point, at a really effed up situation, I was like the only white kid on a Hispanic campus, so they beat the shit out of me every day.
Oh God.
Yeah, I finally accepted that situation. That's the funniest part. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing that too. But my biggest thing is because my body grew so quick, my teeth grew in, so my adults came in as my kids were coming in, teeth were coming in. So like they were really offset. I'm straining them as we speak, but yeah, it was like almost like this, how they were set.
Yeah.
And my crippling self-esteem. So I figured out, if I make them laugh, I do funny voices like Robin Williams, they can't hurt me because I'm making them laugh.
Right. And my version of that was caregiving. If I cared enough, if I sacrificed enough, if I gave enough of myself to people, I would then get, safety, love, appreciation, attention, that kind of thing. So it's totally, we all have our own little things that we use to protect ourselves, because it's all a protection. It's all trying to get love and survive. Like that's literally what it boils down to. And we just use different iterations of protection, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. And that's the biggest one. I would say you might see it. It's behind the stand. I've been reading a ton of books, and the biggest one is I think it was Thinking Fast and Slow. If you read that one.
I haven't.
It's a good one. It explains the psyche and why you do what you do. And essentially he explains, so what he says is logic, we'll say, is system 2, emotions system 1. So he's like, system 1 or emotions can override logic, but logic can't override emotions. He's like, but there's a catch. If you breathe in and out for 10 times, like 10 deep breaths, you can override and go back to logical. And I just sat there and I'm like, so weird kind of like yin yang thing there.
Yep. And what's that's doing is stimulating your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that runs all the way through your body. So then it gets you out of the fight or flight place and gets you back into like, I'm safe, I'm secure, that kind of thing. And it's super interconnected, and that mind, body, spirit sort of holistic approach to it, to the mental health piece, is so important. It's just wild.
It really is.
Yeah. And that's honestly what my book is about. So what I like to do is weave mental health into my art. So I first started getting brave enough to just write and put it on social media. So I'd do these social media posts about what I was going through. And people really responded to it because it's just this universal. I think we're in this place where people are really kind of waking up to the way things were, the way things are, and who you are in that space.
I agree.
Yeah, I just think there's a whole group of people that are just ready to kind of address the traumas or the limiting beliefs, core beliefs that they all have. But they're still kind of uncomfortable with it. But then when you see someone else post or say something, they're like, you're saying what I'm feeling, So what I found was there's a lack of fiction novels about that sort of situation. So there's tons of self-help books, and I'm a self-help development junkie. I love it. I love the stuff, psychology, all that type of stuff. But there's not a whole lot of fiction books, entertaining books that actually go over that. I like to call it coming to consciousness. So instead of coming of age, it's more of like that adult that was autopiloted now is becoming conscious into their world and then making decisions based on that consciousness. So trying to weave entertainment and enlightenment into this work is what I'm trying to do.
No, that's beautiful. And that's interesting. You said the coming of age thing. A lot of people have mentioned that. They're like, oh, this book, and I read the Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
I haven't.
Or some Save the Cat Write a Novel or something like that. And that's where she explains like the different stuff. But she's like, the coming of age is the most. She's like, it doesn't matter what age you're coming from, an old age to a new one. And I'm like, oh, that's actually interesting. It doesn't matter. And for me, it doesn't matter if it's a book, because you can do the same thing to your real life.
Oh, hands down. And that's kind of what I'm trying to portray, is that it's worth it. It's a journey, but it's so freeing once you get through that. It is work, but it's also so worth it. So worth it.
100%. So I want to add this in. Is so like the whole kid thing with the Hispanic school, they got impatient with me and pretty much said I had ADHD and I was a young kid. I didn't know what my emotions meant, kind of thing. So they were pretty much told my parents, you either drug them or you get them out. And this is pre-90s, like pre-Google search and all that. So they didn't know. So they just took the route they recommended. And I've told my parents, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm thankful. Totally. But essentially the doctor, that's where, as you were saying it earlier, it like clicked with me. I was like any kid, it's terrifying to go to a doctor's appointment that you don't even know. And then he had like old Victorian furniture and the thing smelled like leather rub or something.
Right.
So I'm sitting here going like, Mom, I'm choking. But so essentially I was just hooting, hollering, gnashing and clawing like I don't want to go in. So I come in and I just look around and I'm like, ooh, happy, like cool skull. And then like sad, there was like a pig being skewed by a statue, right, kind of thing. So I'm like, I'm confused. And he's like, oh, he went from happy to sad real quick. He's schizophrenic. Here's some pills. Get out.
Oh no. So that's frustrating.
Yeah. So I was like, I was under drugs for like 18 years. And the junior high thing I was mentioning earlier is they had me on some interesting combinations. One of them, well, so you would know that Topamax, Wellbutrin, and Vyvanse with Alaska.
Yeah. Nice node.
Right?
Yeah.
But so that's where they started me, was the Topamax Wellbutrin in junior high. And they couldn't figure out like, why is he going super slow and is emotional? Oh, we'll just throw some Vyvanse in there and he'll get going.
Oh man. Well, and we were in that time it was more drug heavy versus like cognitive behavior therapy, or like talking about emotions and how to handle them and what to do with them. Because like the generation before us, it wasn't big on emotions. They weren't really talking about emotions as much. And so I think they were kind of on that, starting to discuss it and have that conversation, but it was very pharmaceutical heavy. And there were a lot of kids that were really over medicated, and humans in general that are very over medicated, when if you get down to the cause of it, or discussing the hangups so that person can understand it and work through it. I mean, I think you could cut out a lot of it.
And a lot of it was, I just wasn't given context. And I realized for me, I like context. It's right. As free feeling as I'm like, I want patterns and context kind of thing. Yep. And I was never given a reason why I was feeling this way. So the happy end of this story is I went up to Idaho to help my aunt move. I was unemployed for like 6 months. So I'm like, what's another month? I'll go help you move, kind of thing. Yeah. And I ran out of my meds. I'm in this farm on a hill in the middle of nowhere. There's no humans around. And I realized I was like dry for like 3 or 4 days. So it was pretty much out of my system at that point. Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I'm like, I actually feel better. Because I was thoroughly convinced junior high to that point, if I got off my meds, I'd be a crazy manic killer. Right. Oh, great. Yeah. So I wouldn't dare, but it's like, I literally was one of those. At that time, it sucked because near the end, when I was out of everything, I pretty much ate the whole house out. I'm like, do I have to start setting up traps at this point? Do I need to get a license to set up traps?
Right.
But
Yeah.
no, and that was the blessing. And then I got home back to the regime. But I actually went to when I got my current job that I had to go to a new doctor, and he pretty much was like very professional Indian man, would never say a bad thing. And I came in and he said, "Oh, hey, how are you doing, Josh? How long have you been on this?" And I'm like 12-ish years that I can remember. And he's like, "Just curious, do you remember the doorknob coming in? It's very unique. It has a very specific pattern and dots on it." I'm like, "No, I kind of remember getting the receptionist, but not really. It's kind of fuzzy." He's like, "Yeah, the drugs, that's not good. How long have you been on this shit?" And that's immediately when I sat there. I'm like, okay, this very professional Indian man just said that I've been on this. I'm like,
Right.
done. I went cold turkey that day.
Did you feel okay afterwards? Like, did you?
It was because of the Idaho one. I knew that I wasn't going to go crazy. So I just
Yeah.
mainly found like some herbal, like it's called Glee, Glee.
Mm-hmm.
Just to like, yeah, it's just like herbs and stuff. But it was just to stabilize me. It might have been more placebo than anything else, but it worked.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And
I mean, yeah, there's definitely a time and a place for Western medicine. Like in the acute care setting, I can totally see it. Someone having a heart attack, great. There's lots of options, and people's lives are saved. It's the chronic care that really is not there yet. Like we're struggling, and that's where primary care is struggling to keep people in that position, because it's so difficult, because really to address that stuff and not just throw a pharmaceutical at it, it takes a lot of time. I don't know about you, but like I said, I went through depression for a while, and I was on antidepressants, and I went down that road, and they were helpful for the time that I needed. But then the fuzziness, the side effects, all the things that came with it was just like, well, it's not lifelong of what I want to do for me personally. But yeah, there's just other options. There's other therapies. There's other ways to kind of support yourself through that journey too.
Oh, 100%. And yeah, I was very depressed at most of my life, actually. And it was just one of those, now that I've been clean and like studying and learning, I'm like, I actually sit there at times, like I'll be sore because I work night shifts. So I'm like, I don't want to go into work. But in general, I'm very happy now. And it's just one of those, I joke with myself. I'm like, man, I haven't known this feeling in a long time. I'm just like, and if I did have it, the drugs made me forget it.
Right. Well, it made you kind of flat at times, right? Like you couldn't feel the highs, but you couldn't feel the lows either,
Right.
so both of it type thing. Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about your story. That is interesting. And I'm like, I just threw in my story. Now we got to talk about yours.
No.
What are you writing? What is the arch of it?
So the arch of it is about a woman. It's set in the 1860s, so like gold rush era.
Okay.
And it's about her life up in the mountains, raised by a couple dysfunctional parents. And her worthiness is all dependent on her ability to produce, provide, and protect her sisters. And so it goes through the arc of life as she knew it and expected was then stripped from her. And so that took her identity and what kind of a crisis that came with it. So there's a little bit of, there's a love story in it, but then there's also a bit of self-sabotage and feeling like she doesn't deserve the things in her life that she should deserve. And then going into activities like drinking and sex and racing and shooting and all the things to kind of perpetuate her belief that she doesn't deserve love, that she doesn't deserve happiness, that kind of stuff. And then she goes through that journey to decide, is that the life she wants or not? And kind of the steps she goes through to decide that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. And I'm just sitting here imagining it. It's like the racing, the sex, and the drugs, and I'm like, oh, that's actually interesting. I'm like, it would be horses back then, I think.
Yeah,
But
right. That's the point, is like, you look at that hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And back then, I mean, it was safety, survival, security. So how can someone in that age and generation and situation come to terms with self-actualization and their purpose in life and what their core beliefs are, and kind of getting through that, all in the mix of societal norms and expectations of women back in that time period.
which was intense, but not fair
Yeah,
at all.
right. Yeah, I'm actually reading a book about women back in that time during like the gold rush. It's called Good Time Girls, and it's about like the prostitutes, the women who went up, they were the showgirls and everything. And it sounded wild. Like, it sounded so interesting and wild. And for back then, and that's that, expectation, I can't imagine what those women felt doing that, bucking that societal norm of getting married, having kids. Like, these are women who wanted to live an adventure. So it's very, very interesting.
That's very interesting. I'll definitely have to look that up then.
Yeah, it's good. So yeah, it's also touching on generational trauma, as in the backstory. Her parents had difficult time with their parents, and so they brought what they could and their understanding of what a good parent is into raising their own children, and how that affected those children and how that moves forward. So there's another book called It Didn't Start With You, and it's about that generational trauma and why we do what we do. And so it's kind of depicting that cycle, and then at some point deciding, is this the cycle I want to keep perpetuating?
That's awesome. Okay, so I have like 2 books now I have to look up.
Yeah, I know. I'm a book nerd. Yep.
So, how far along are you in your story? Have you at least gotten like a rough draft, or more like the first 3 scenes?
Oh, so I am at the point where I'm submitting it to New Degree Press, which is the publishing company that I'm going through.
Okay.
Right now it's they're deciding it. In the next week, I should hear if I get what they call greenlit in the publishing world, which means you have enough content and all that. And I've actually kept going on, and I'm near the end of my manuscript. So yeah, I have about 8 chapters left that I'm going to complete. And then from there, it goes to another editor, and then we kind of keep moving forward.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I never...
Okay. I want to say, when you're done, I want a signed copy.
For sure. Yeah. So there's a piece of this. So this program's actually through Georgetown University. The professor's name, Eric Custer, and he made this program to help authors become published. And so it's a whole program that helps you through each step. And one of the steps eventually is it's like an indie option. Instead of getting a traditional publishing where you go to a publisher and they give you a royalty, he's trying to help authors have more ownership over their art. Mm-hmm. And so it's a bit of a combo. Instead of self-publishing or just doing the royalties piece, it's a combo of the two. So there's a pre-launch campaign that's going to be in April that I'll share with you and everything. So it's awesome. Kind of support that whole process.
No, that's beautiful. No, that story is going to do very well. And I'm very certain, I'm like trying to think and scratch. You're going to help a lot of people as they read, they realize, oh, I see myself in this character, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I've done some interviews with different women, or even my dad. I was talking to him about it, and he goes, "Are you writing this about me?" And people always ask, "Is this about me?" And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's about this human experience that I think we all really do identify with. And so it's very interesting how universal it is, even if it's a male or a female.
Oh, yeah. I was actually talking to a therapist earlier on in 2021, and that was the one thing we were talking. And other than him being on the East Coast and he's Jewish, we had the same story. And he's only like 4 years ahead of me. And I'm like, this is crazy. We like, other than the fact that you're East Coast and you're Jewish, we had literally the same path to where we are. And I'm like,
Right.
I've always thought I was the only one. And he's like, oh no, I've realized a long time ago being a therapist, it's the universal human condition.
It is.
We don't know what it means though, and no one tells us what the condition is.
Right. And no one's really talked about it up until this point. And it's just an incredible, difficult, beautiful, hard, amazing journey that we all go through. And we think we're isolated in it. And it's like, no, we're all feeling this. And if we just talked about it more, we would not feel so alone, you know?
So one thing actually me and him brought up, and I'm pretty sure you would agree with this too. I said, I'm pretty sure like this whole depression, like in general depression and medication is because of urbanization. But I'm like, our ancestors, the tribe was maybe at worst 50 people. So one human can memorize 50 people's different things. And because you didn't do that much, you talk to them about like, oh, I feel this. Why is my hand doing this kind of thing? And they'll be like, oh, kid, okay, you're growing, kind of like go run it off kind of thing.
Right.
But we don't have that because it's sounds silly. As connected as we are with technology, we're not that connected though.
Correct. And well, what we see is the shiny pieces. You know, we all see the polished versions of each other, that it's like when I'm having a bad day, even this morning, I was like, okay, get on this interview. Let's do this. You know, I still have to pump myself up to talk about this stuff because it's super vulnerable. And so what we see is comparing ourselves to the shiny version. And so that's not connecting. That's actually separating and making you feel more isolated because I don't have what they have, or I'm not as happy as they are. And look at versus in a smaller tribe. I mean, I think you were so intertwined that you saw the good, bad, and the ugly, not just snapshot of the curated, photoshopped thing. You know, you saw the chief tribe leader lose their shit over someone making a bad decision, you know, like, that's part of it, you know? And so the reality is that we all go through ugly, beautiful pieces of it. And that's part of the journey. And something else that I really came through lately was that, like, you know, I wasn't feeling a whole lot of passion with my career and everything. And then I was talking to my coach about it, and I go, but the interesting thing is with this writing is that it's not all fun. You know, there's parts of it that I'm like, dude, this is tough. This is, you know, I'm really having to dive deep and pull, but I love that. So then what is it about passion that we're really into? And we were like, you know what? It's more about you care about it. So passion is this glimmery version of giving a shit about something, you know?
Right.
And if you don't care so deeply about something, you can't, you won't appreciate the lows and the highs. And so if you don't have those low moments or hard moments or working through difficult situations, you won't appreciate the high excitement, publishing, writing all your words, doing all the things that come with it. And I think people get really stuck on this passion word when it's like, I think you have to experience the highs and lows of life to have the human experience.
And that's one buzzword everyone throws around, but they don't explain. And that's the biggest one for me. Because like for me, I've done martial arts 15 years of my life now. I'm a second degree black belt, but my passion wasn't the fighting. It was the patterns and the infinite possibilities, even though it's punch, punch, kick. Well, you can do a kick, punch, punch. That's like my brain loved that. And I was just one of those halfway through, because I was at that certain point, I was a brilliant fighter. My instructor could pit me with pretty much anyone and I could win. And they were jokingly betting against me and I didn't know it. And near the end, my martial arts instructor's like, yeah, you know, you just made that guy like $2,000. I'm like, hey, can I get a cut?
Yeah, right. 10%, man.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what he told me. He's like, why are you so good? I'm like, I don't know. I like the possibilities. I have to think. It's always changing. And he's like, you like patterns. He's
Yep.
like, he's like, focus on that. And
Yep.
that's one of those, even during the drug deal, I've always remembered that. I'm like, okay. And that's where now I'm teaching myself, like trading and business. And that's one of those, I realized there's a very specific pattern in trading, but there's an even more specific pattern in how business works. And if you follow it correctly, you're guaranteed success. Well, I'm gonna say the same for you. It's like to get your doctorate degree, it was a very specific way. You had to get to the top. Once you're there, it's done. And
Right.
I've realized, I'm like, ooh, wow, where's this been my whole life?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And with writing, that same sort of like light, the way you were talking about it, you could see the light coming from your eyes when you're talking about like martial arts and everything like that. And it's that same sort of mind like processing that comes with writing as well. And I think we all just need to find that little thing that makes your eyes light up, and then apply it to what you want to do in the world. And then that's your purpose, you know, even if there was someone online selling Harry Potter wands, and they were talking about this wand like it was
The best thing ever.
thing ever, and they were just so into it. And so then you get drawn into those situations, like, wow, they're really passionate about that. Oh, I can see why they care about that. And I think we all are just trying to figure out what that little thing is to be your purpose in the world.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
You know,
And that's one of those things. One of the guys, he was talking about something and he was super monotone, but I just asked him, I'm like, hey, what about this? And he lit up, and it's one of those, it was a super boring topic, but I'm like, he's passionate, I'm gonna shut up kind of thing.
exactly. Yeah. And that's what makes you a good interviewer, is because you can pick that up, that type of human spark that people just have. And it's just it's finding your own spark is that whole living your best life is the same token, is like, what makes you tick, and do more of that.
Well, my explaining was, what can you lose track of time and you look at your phone and go, oh shit, it's been 2 hours kind of thing.
Right.
I'm like, whatever that is, figure out how to make money. Or if it's just paint, right. And eventually you might be able to sell it.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because all the other stuff I've done, I've really had to force myself. Like, I would make myself sit and study, and I'd write these technical research papers. And I just was like, okay, now you just got to get through this, because that's just what you do. And then writing this book, I could talk about this all day, about all the storylines, about all the characters and all this different stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what it is right there. And, you know, if it makes it big, great. If it doesn't, I don't care. It feels right. And that's all that matters, you know?
I've read Stephen King's memoir on writing, and his son comes on at the end. I listen to my books. I've realized that's another one for me. Listening is better than seeing. I get like weird Tourette's. Like the letters jump everywhere.
Yeah.
But and it was just one of those. No, it's not Tourette's. Dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of those. His son at the end, he wrote this book, super passionate. He's like, I don't care if only 7 people buy this book. At least 7 people read it.
Right. Yeah. And same thing. I was talking to my coach the other day, and we were talking about like, okay, what's the definition of success for this story, for this book? And I go, that it makes people think outside the box and question, are they living the life they're wanting to live? And she's like, okay, in the conversations that you've had with people, has that already sparked that conversation? And I'm like, oh yeah, like people are either for it, or they're like, what are you doing? You're technically like leaving your degree that you spent all these years for. So it calls out in people like the discomfort of chasing your dreams kind of thing. Yeah. And so at the very least, it's done that already. So in my book, like, it's successful. So
I want to say, it's just successful in that you're finding yourself and you're
Right.
kind of indirectly healing your own wounds as you're going along.
That's exactly it. That's it. That's what I'm doing. And if it's, and, you know, I hope it helps other people, and I think it will, but if it doesn't, it's just that passion and excitement and, you know, spark that is me. And I'm just letting it out and pouring it out now. And it just is amazing. It's incredibly fun.
It is. So, okay, you mentioned it earlier, and I totally missed my opportunity to say it. What is some of the romance, the love relationship the character gets into?
So it's a combination of being with a guy that would treat her correctly, and that is uncomfortable for her. And then,
okay,
yeah, that's uncomfortable for her because it's not what she's experienced growing up or seen or can expect in those times. And how that becomes so uncomfortable that she pushes it away. And then there's another interest who maybe isn't the best option for her, but also reminds her of the life that she's always had. So that feels comfortable, and how a lot of people can get into dysfunctional relationships because that trauma and discomfort and that experience is more comfortable than the healthy, supportive relationship that is available.
Yeah, no, I know a lot of people that have gotten into it. Actually, one of my high school friends, she was the quiet introvert. Like, I thought I was introverted. I was super extroverted compared to her.
Right.
Like, I could barely get hello out of her. That's how introverted she was. And one of my buddies, we still hang out. He told me, "Oh, do you remember I have to say why something? Yes, we'll call her Yosinia." He's like, "Have you seen Yosinia lately?" I'm like, "Yeah, I saw her once at Taco Bell," kind of thing, when I was just getting a taco to go for the road. And he's like, "Was she with anyone?" I'm like, "No, just her." He's like, "She, after high school, after we graduated, she still had one more year, and she got knocked up by some jerk because apparently her family just abused her mentally and physically, and no one showed her love, and he just showed an ounce of love."
Right.
And it was just one of those. He's like, "Yeah, so she had like 2 kids," and I'm like, "That's such a shitty story."
Yeah.
She's such a sweetheart. She didn't deserve that.
Right. Right. And, you know, it's that quote, we accept the love we think we deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you think you don't deserve love, you're going to be attracted to an undeserving partner, until you either work through it, experience it, decide that you want something different, or there's some people that stay in it for a lifetime, you know?
Is she, from what we know, we can't find her. She's not even on social media. It's one of those, like, even if we wanted to find her, we wouldn't be able to.
Right.
And apparently she's still with him, that we can tell. And I'm like, that's so sad. That's so sad.
And I bet that in those cases, in that situation, I bet she had parents who had similar situations, and before that, I bet you could trace that all the way back into generational trauma that ended up teaching her what she knows to be true, quote unquote, true to her. Right. And so, so it's a kind of a triangle with the 2 guys that she ends up being involved with, but it's to discuss those topics of, you know, the love that we think we deserve is the one that we accept.
So does she, okay, just curious, does she eventually get the right one?
I can't tell you that.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to read it.
I can't tell you that. That's part of it.
Okay.
It's at this point, I'm still trying to figure that one out myself, because what's interesting is when I'm writing it, the guy, Logan, that tends to be dysfunctional, he ends up being more likable than I want him to be. So I'm kind of struggling with that myself.
So decide. I'm going to say, take this for what it's worth. For a beat, so there's, for the beat sheet of an arc, that could be a false defeat.
Right.
So she could fall in love with him, even be proposed to, but then something happens and the other person, I don't know his name, comes up and is like, "But I actually really did like you." And she'll be like,
Yep.
And then just runs away. Classic running off the wedding vow and all that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be interesting because I really want to portray the allure that comes with being in a dysfunctional relationship too, because there's a lot of passion and excitement and free will and all this different stuff that comes with being with a dysfunctional human. So what comes with that is it's kind of sexy, it's kind of hot, it's kind of intriguing.
Right.
So I have to be careful to not make him too hot.
I was going to ask, is this a pen name or your actual name?
My actual name. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say, if it was a pen name, then have fun.
Yeah, right. No. My actual name. That's honestly part of this is overcoming my people pleasing. And so speaking my story in the way I want to is super vulnerable. And it's a practice of, no, this is me. This is my name. This is my story. And whoever listens to it or reads it, this is mine.
So I'm just going to ask more curiosity because I like stories, would be part of the pattern thing. Would this hot, steamy, sexy stuff actually help the story?
I think it will, in the sense of showing that it's an example of a type of self-sabotage. It's, like drinking too heavily, being risky, sometimes sleeping around, not always. It totally depends on this intention, but how that can be a form of self-sabotage to reiterate your reality, as in, I won't be treated well. Clearly, here's another example of it type thing. So I do think it will move into the story and strengthen it. And so, but we'll see. Like I said, it still is something I'm working through.
I was going to say the best advice, I'm going to be quoting King again, but I've read it in a lot of other places, is if it will actually help the story, and as long as it's not like morally compromising to most people, just put it in.
Right. Yeah. And I've had to be the whole promiscuity and the drinking and, fast living, that kind of stuff. I've really pushed myself to actually put that in there so that it's a topic to discuss, because a lot of times that isn't something that we kind of address. It's about the love, about the attraction and dating and all that type of stuff. But I kind of want to use those points to prove sort of a situation of self-sabotage. I don't know if you watch Shameless, but that's a big, yeah.
Oh
so
my God.
When Fiona loses it and kind of makes some bad decisions and does those types of things, there's a reason, right? And her reality is she likes chaos. She's addicted to it. She doesn't expect people to come through for her. So she's attracted to those types of people. And so that to me is super interesting to write about and to explore.
Yeah, no, then do it. Honestly.
Yeah.
I was like, sorry. Would it affect your practice if you do it that way, or not really?
My practice? What do you mean?
Sorry, your current job.
Oh, I don't think so. Okay. I don't think. If so, that's too bad for them.
You don't get to.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. What's been interesting is for a long time I held that wanting to be a writer into myself and just kind of quietly did it. And then finally I announced it. I did my book announcement, and people in my world of medicine and my coworkers, they are so excited and have been so encouraging and just interestingly supportive in this venture. People from my high school, everyone's been, super excited for me for it. So it's, it feels great, because then it's like, nope, this is who I am. This is what I want to write. And, I think people will love it, will hate it, and there'll be some in the middle, and that's okay,
Yeah, that was my grandfather said it, and it's actually one of those, I really like how he said it. He's like, you can't make everyone happy. Just don't piss off the whole world and you're good to go.
Right. Right. Totally.
And it was just one of those, as because it's funny, I've been like trying to cultivate, like I was saying, I like stories, so I've been trying to work one out. For me, it's better to say it, so I have like a transcribing software that I talk it out. I at times sound really crazy when I'm saying things out loud.
Yeah.
And this one person, he's a new kid, he saw me talking, so he kind of like came over and was like, hey Josh, you okay? You're kind of talking to yourself you're waving your hands around as you're moving the machine. You okay? I'm like, oh no, sorry, I'm working a story out in my head.
Right.
So I told him, I said, oh yeah, it's this guy that wakes up in the field. Come to find out, he's been stabbed, and he's trying to get into town because it was harvest day, and this crazy, like jacked, huge, like totally steroided out guy is holding a witch head in one hand and a claymore in the other, which he should be using both hands for the claymore, but he's just that strong. And they go in and he hears from one of the ladies. He had essentially attacked like the villain of the area and was just ran through, and he's been gone for 2 weeks. And he's like, oh, that's weird. Always, whatever, Miss Jenkins, and keeps going. And that's where I'm like, that's about where I'm at. And now it's getting to the crazy old farmer dude with missing teeth, big pot belly, super illiterate and spitting everywhere. And he just literally, he's like, dude, that's like really good. You see that? I'm like, well, there's like 26 versions running at any given time, but this is the most sane version I can figure out.
Dude, you got to write your book. You're thinking like I am. That's it. Yep.
And it was just one of those, that's where I'm now have to work on it when I get a chance, more time to myself. Because he's like, he told his girlfriend, and she loves Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. And she's like, I wanted your number because I was going to give you the phone and talk to her and tell the rest. I'm like, oh,
right.
Shoot. And now I have to do it.
Now you have to do it. That's the thing with this program. They're really big on like putting that out in the world. And I was like, God, I don't want to announce this book so early on, but I'm glad I did, because it really holds you like accountable. I said I was writing this book. People know, like it's gonna get written, and
yeah.
So yeah, people are way more supportive about this kind of stuff than you would think. I think it's exciting, and again, to see that excitement in you, I think people are batting for you, are rooting for you more than
more than I realized too. That's the biggest one. And like I would go to church like with my family and all that, and one of the guys, his name was David. We'll call him DJ. That's actually what he goes by anyways. I don't think he listens to this. If he does, tell me. But it was the same thing but that's when I was on the heavy stuff. So I was really, really seeing like vivid pictures, like full on medieval sieges playing out, children crying in the street as the blood pours out and the mother's cradling it as it's dying. And it's one of those, I got so used to it. I'm like, oh, there's a siege. Okay, whatever.
Another battle scene.
Yeah. But that's where and I would say is most human reaction. When you see something really traumatic, you kind of like flinch for a second and you keep going. So he saw me flinch. He's like, you don't flinch that often. What's going on? So I told him, and I said, I can't figure it out. Why do I keep seeing this? And he's like, that could be a really good story. I'm sorry to throw that out there.
Right. Totally.
I mean, but it's so morbid. Like the mother's holding a dying child and blood's going down the street. I'm like, that's really macabre.
You've watched Game of Thrones, right? Like,
yes.
People like that stuff. People are into it. That's my book, same situation, where it's like it's dealing with kind of heavy stuff. And I'm like, God, do I want it to be that gut wrenching and it's like that's part of reality too, and it's like if it's in there, you got to go for it, because obviously you're seeing it for a reason type thing. And that was one of those. I even told him like, this is on repeat though. It's really annoying. It gets to the point like I could be in a pizza parlor and a samurai just jumps behind the counter. It's like, Jay. Yep, you're a writer. I can already tell it, because that is literally what my brain's doing at all times. Honestly, my job as a nurse practitioner is a nice break for me, because because my brain is so constantly going on this story and what this means and how can I show this? And is that important enough to be in there? It's like a constant, all the TV shows, all the books I'm reading, it gets filtered through my art now. And there's times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a break from this. And then I go over, take care of patients, do the, the things that I know how to do quickly and in a good way.
Yeah, it keeps your mind just occupied enough that you're not focusing on it, but it's running in the background. You just can't focus on it.
Exactly. And someone at work, actually, I was talking to them about this, and they were saying that Einstein worked at a hardware store so that he would shut his brain off. So
yes,
it's like,
I remember someone saying that.
Yeah. So it's so consistent with that, where it's like, that's where I'm using my degree and my profession as a way to kind of balance my life out, because you could really get consumed in writing your art, everything, because it's so emotionally attached and involved that it's a good break for me, for sure.
Oh yeah. There was a week ago, I didn't have any guests. It was one of those, like, you were one of the first to book. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I was like clearing out slots. But last week I had so much time. I was just sitting there. And so, because I work night shift, my alarm goes off for 12:30 warning. And I'm like, I've been at this for 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, it only felt like 4 minutes.
Yep. That's how I feel with writing. That's exactly it. And it's, the way I got to this place is do more of the stuff that makes you forget the time, like that it just flies by. Do more that makes you happy.
100%. I love it. Let's, I got 3 going out questions for you. So, okay. Other than work and writing now, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy during these COVID times?
Oh, isn't that enough? That's kind of it. I'm married and we're renovating right now, but honestly, I'm big on exercising, eating right, doing kind of all the things. I'm really into self-care. So you can find me like hot tubs, baths, exercising, getting together with friends, deep conversations. And that's just kind of my, constant in my life. So combination of all those things intertwined depending on my mood and energy type thing.
There we go. I just like doing it. I was like, hey, we just talked about writing. So other than work and writing, what do you do?
Yep.
So someone aspiring to be like you, what are some tips, tricks, or advice you give them to start down the path?
Start looking inwards so you can live out loud. So look inwards at the things that are getting in your way and start addressing those. You can do that by yourself or with some help. And the more help and support you get, the quicker you get through those hangups to where you can live authentically. So my first step would be to start looking at yourself and what needs are not being met, and then address those so that you can free yourself from whatever like sticky place you're in.
That's beautiful. No, that's very good. So where can everyone contact you? Social media, websites?
Yeah. So I have my author. It's mainly Instagram right now. It's Terece Hahn _author.
Okay.
And that's where I am posting my journey on my writing, the experiences, kind of the process and everything. And then if you want to email me, it's terece.hahn@gmail.com. And then I do have a personal page that's just Terece Hahn on Instagram.
That's awesome. I'm going to add you right now.
Thank you.
Perfect. I love it. You're always welcome on the show whenever you want to come. You have my calendar link. You can always book yourself some.
Oh, this is great. I love your episodes. I started listening to them, and specifically the one with your dad was really great.
Yeah. Another guy he's like, I'm a father. And he's like, it's really cute to hear a father and son banter like that.
It was great. It was really great. I love how controversial all your topics were. Like, you guys just, let's talk about all the hot stuff.
And literally, it was just one of those, again, it was a dry spell. So I was like, all right, you can literally talk about anything. He's like, all right, I'm going to take you up on that. I'm like, oh,
my time. I
he's
loved it.
He's like, it's been like 4.5 years of pent up shit.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But he did it in such a calm and wise way.
Well, and one of my coworkers who listens to my show every so often, he even said, he's like, you guys like hit all the red buttons, but he's like, he's like, somehow it's like the way you two bantered with each other. I was like, oh, okay. They talked about a really controversial thing, but whatever.
Yeah, it didn't feel threatening. It was just like a awesome conversation about controversial stuff that a lot of people could not have that conversation with. One, their parent. Two, recorded.
No, that was one of them. Afterwards, I'm like, if this is going to be a consistent thing, we might have to just start a separate one for you.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Perfect. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you. And I've learned a lot. I don't know about the others listening, but I learned a lot about myself today.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you for your time. And I really enjoying your show. So keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome.
Well, congratulations. You made it to the end. You're an awesome person. Not many make it here. So, being the awesome person that you are, can you do me one more awesome favor? Can you rate and review this on whatever podcast services you're using? If you do it on Apple and you leave an actual written review, I have a thing on my website. I will take your written review and post it for all to see. Congratulations. You're permanently sealed on my site. Otherwise, I am trying to do YouTube more and live streaming. I will try to put as many of the YouTube links in the description of the show as I can. So give your boy some extra help over on YouTube. Watch my videos. I just mute it and change the channel, change the window or something. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for being awesome and see you next time.